Hello, it's Ramil from DHX Tech Support Team, and in this video, we'll learn how to easily create a Gantt chart application using Laravel framework. You can get a ready demo on GitHub or follow this step-by-step video guide. For the sake of this video, I assume you're already familiar with the basics of PHP and have it installed in your system, as well as the Composer package manager. If you're unsure about it, you may want to check out the introductory documentation of Laravel framework. All links will be in the video description. Now, we'll start by generating a project boilerplate using the create project command. It should take a minute to download and create all the necessary files. Once it is done, we can check that everything is correct. At this step, we get a default Laravel page. All right. Next, we'll create a new page with the Gantt chart. Go to the Views folder and create a new view named Gantt.blade.php. It should take just 3 steps to display the Gantt chart on the page. In the first instance, we add the Gantt library to the page, then create an HTML container on the page, and initialize Gantt in the newly created container with the init method. As a parameter, the method takes an HTML container, or its ID, that the Gantt chart will be displayed in. After we add a new page, we need to make it accessible from the browser. For this tutorial, we'll make our Gantt the default page of an app. Go to web.php and change the default route to Gantt. Let's check what we have at the moment. So we have an empty Gantt chart. Now we want our Gantt to take data from the database using the model. In this video, I'll be using MySQL for the database and assume you also have it installed in your system. We need to create a new database on your MySQL server. At the time of recording, there are some issues with the MySQL of version 8 on PHP that requires workarounds. So for simplicity, I'm using MySQL 5.7. When you make sure the database server is running, you can open the .env file and update the connection settings. Here, I specify the database I've just created and set the database user and password. The rest of the settings are good with the default values. The next step is to create model classes and migrations. We generate classes and migration files using the artisan command. You can see that migrations have been successfully created. Now let's open the migration files and specify columns for our tasks and links. The code for the tasks table can look like this. And the code for the links table is the following. It's a bare minimum required for Gantt to work. If we need to store any extra data, we can add any number of columns without trouble. Now we run the migration. While we're at it, we can generate some test data for our app. Generate a seeder class using the artisan command. Now we add some data to tasks table seeder. I've added several tasks to check that the data is loading. And call table seeders from databaseseeder.php. After that, we can seed our database from the command line. Once the database is created and the models are defined, we can load data into our Gantt. The client side accepts data in the JSON format. We can create a simple controller to see how it works. And register a route, so the client could call this action. Note that we'll add the route to the api.php routes file. And finally, call this action from the view using the Gantt.load method. Gantt.load sends an AJAX request to the specified URL, and will expect a JSON response as we've defined before. Also, note that we've specified the XML date value. This is how we tell our Gantt which format of dates the data source will use, so that the client side could parse them. If we launch the application again, Gantt should display tasks we've added to the database. Although the tasks tree is collapsed by default, you might want it to be expanded. The initial state of the project tree can be controlled either from a public config of the client-side Gantt or from the data returned from the server. Since we're covering Laravel integration, let's proceed with the latter. In the official docs, we can find that the initial state of the task is defined by the value of the open property. I don't think we want to store this value in the task model. Instead, we can add a fixed value attribute to the task class. If we run the application again, the branch should be expanded initially. For now, our Gantt can read data from the backend, but no changes made on the client will be sent to the backend or saved to the database. For example, if I add a new task here and then reload the page, you can see that the task disappeared. Let's fix it. As I've shown in our previous video, you can enable updates on the client side pretty easily. What we need now is to define controllers that handle actions on both task and link models, create routes for them, and enable data saving on the client side. Let's start with controllers. We'll create one resource controller for each model. It will contain methods for adding, deleting, and updating the model. This method is pretty straightforward. The client side sends us a task object and the request parameters, then we construct a model entry from it and save it to the storage. There are a couple of things specific to DHTMLX Gantt though. Note that we check the progress value and assign a default 0 in case the request parameter is empty. We do it because the client-side Gantt considers this column optional and may not send it to the backend if the value is not set on the client. In this case, you'll need the default value to be set to 0 instead of null. Secondly, note the response format. The action parameter tells the client side the result of the action. There are a few fixed values the client understands. In this case, we return the inserted status for a successfully added item. And there is also the TID parameter, which should contain the database ID of the new item. We can actually send any additional info with the response back to the client. By default, Gantt will ignore it, but we'll be able to access it using the public API. And here are the update and destroy actions. They work in pretty much the same way, so I won't expand on them further. Don't forget to add a route for our new controller so that our Gantt could call it. Now let's implement the same for the link controller. I won't elaborate too much since it's exactly the same as the task controller we've just implemented. Here you can see the store method that creates a new link. The update method that saves changes to existing items and the destroy method are almost identical to it. And as in the previous case, be sure to add a route. Finally, we can enable updates on the client side. Given that we've made everything right in the previous steps, our Gantt will save changes using controllers we've just implemented. Let's run the app again and check. If you look at the dev tools, you should see that the Gantt now calls the server each time I modify something. And if I reload the page, all changes will persist. You can look at our previous video and our official docs if you want to know more about the request formats Gantt uses. And this is it. We created a simple Laravel application with the Gantt chart in it, which should serve you as a starting point in your experiments with DHTMLX Gantt. You can find a link to the text version of this tutorial in the video description, as well as a link to the GitHub repository with the complete application. Next time, we plan to do a series of short videos exploring different parts of the Gantt API and common tasks you'd usually face using Gantt in an actual project, like the configuration of the left-hand grid in the Gantt chart. Please let me know in the comments section what other topics you'd like to be covered in the future. Take care, and thank you for watching this video.